When the smoke clears, we're still standing.
Bulldog 3-3, patch 8 November, fire for effect, over. Enemy OP on Hilltop, over.
When the smoke clears, we're still standing.
Welcome, everybody, to Everlasting Veteran. I'm your host, Ryan Landry. I am joined in studio with comedian Marty Caproni. I met him a while back over at Mohegan Sun at the Comics Roadhouse. I just had to have him on the show. He's a funny guy, and he wants to be able to tell his story and comedy and everything that he's got going on in his life and how he got into comedy. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. I appreciate it, man. It was a pleasure meeting you after those. That was was that about a month ago or so, a little over a month ago, when I was headlining comics. And, you came up and you were like, do you want to do a podcast? And usually when that happens, I'm like, no. But you're smart. You had the word veteran in the title of the podcast. And I was like, how could I turn down somebody who fought for our country? And then I watched your beginning clip to starting this podcast, and I just realized like what a pansy I am. You know what I mean? Like what a half a man I am watching that clip. So thanks for emasculating me. Appreciate it. If there was a cool podcast where there was like, it was a comedy, like veterans of comedy podcast, it would just be like just clips of like people throwing dinner rolls at my face or sad stuff. But that's cool, man. It's I appreciate your service, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. And, with the podcast, I've, created helping with transition and helping with, bettering your mindset and all that stuff. And, a lot of it comes from laughter as well, because, you can't take life so serious all the time. And I'm guilty of it sometimes as well, but I actually went to that comedy show because I needed to clear my head, because I was getting that like tunnel focus with the podcast, trying to make it the best it can be, and I was kind of losing, I guess, creativity is, the best way to put it. And what better than go to a comedy show? And I'm glad I did, because you're absolutely hilarious.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that a lot, man. Thank you. Laughter, they always say, laughter is the best medicine, whatever. I don't know how true or not true that is. I don't think it's the best medicine. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably a distant fifth after like chemo and blood pressure meds and a bunch of other stuff. But it's good to be able to help people sometimes with what we do. It doesn't happen often, but it's cool when it does. And you're talking about worrying about, the little stuff and get caught up in the bullshit, the mundane stuff of life. I guess I should probably ask you a question about your podcast, but I'm curious to know, because we really haven't talked much other than just like, are you going to do it? What day are we going to do it? Blah, blah, blah. But so I'm guessing you served, I was trying to look at the pictures. Was it Army? Were you Army?
Yep. Yeah. I was active duty from 2009 to the end of 2012. I spent my entire time stationed overseas, either in Germany and that, saw the videos of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And then I got out the end of 2012, and I was National Guard up until 2017, but I got hired with the police department about 6.5 months later after getting out in 2012. And I've been a cop ever since. Been a cop for going on 11 years now.
Just a glutton for punishment with difficult jobs.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like you have that sense of service, that sense of duty, but you don't realize like the amount of paperwork that goes into like policing, and it's like, you have to say stuff a certain way in your police report. You can't just be like, he came here and he did this and he got arrested, and then just send that in. You have to like put in like super details, that you would never think of if you weren't a police officer, and it's one of those things they don't tell you when you get hired, like, hey, the majority of the job is paperwork.
A lot of paperwork.
Yeah. So otherwise they would not get anybody to get hired, and it's just one of those things. I mean, there's highs to it, and I work nights mostly, so I deal with pretty much the people you don't see most of the time because they're up at night.
Yeah,
You know, so it's an interesting job. Every day is a little bit different.
Now, are you on the force? I'm guessing local and probably somewhere near where you are in Connecticut. I know you probably don't want to say, so that's fine.
Yeah. I'm local. You know, born and raised in Norwich. I work in Norwich. I'm not afraid to put it out. A lot of people know me. I work at the Norwich Police Department.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I wanted to get hired there because I was born and raised in Norwich.
Yeah.
You know, there's a sense of pride of where you come from and serving the community in which you grew up in. You know, graduated NFA 2005, and you know that's why I wanted to get hired by the Norwich Police Department. You know, I don't hide it. You know, I'm not one of those people to be like, oh, I don't want people to know where I work. No, people know where I work. You can look me up. You know,
that's good though. You know what I mean? Because I think that's one of the things sometimes, especially in today's day and age, that cops need to do here and there is to humanize themselves.
Yeah.
You know, for people to hear your story or see outside of just being in the uniform on the job, because it's right now, I know of all the times, I mean, I think you were probably there. I don't know if I said the joke, but it's one of the more thankless jobs, and in an era where everyone's talking about heroes this, heroes that, with all the COVID stuff and everything else that was going on, you know, and then everyone kind of, I mean, shits on police officers and police work, and it's the one job I couldn't do, you know, like I say on stage. I don't have the demeanor for it because I watch YouTube and I see the videos where the kids are like, you know, am I being detained? I'm a sovereign citizen. I'm traveling. I'm not driving. I'm like, one day of that, the first day I don't have a field training officer, I'd just be like, clackety clack. Just like, that's the ninth person Marty tased this week. I'd just be out there tasing kids left and right. I give you a lot of credit for it, man. I know it's a difficult time. And listen, to be sensitive to other people too. I also know, you know, to be fair, I know there's some guys who do the job who don't belong on the job, and that's a tough, awkward position to be on when you're on the force and everything else, because those are also your brothers that you need on a call if it goes sideways. So sometimes it's hard for people to understand how that culture, you know, pervades sometimes some of the departments and everything. But I get it, man. You know, you seem like a good dude. You served. You're doing the right thing, and I appreciate it. I know most people, even people who act like they don't appreciate it, I think they appreciate it even without knowing. You know, you see a lot of the people who are defund the police, defund the police, defund the police, and then you see some of the places where they've done that and some of the resulting stuff. You know,
yeah.
Dude, it's a tough go, man. You know, it is. You know, and I say that because I'm usually pretty sensitive to that. But to be fair, also, like, I say that now, but if I get pulled over, like tonight, I'm just driving to the store and I get pulled over and I get hassled, I'm like, this stupid, who's this idiot? Who's this? I suddenly become very anti-police. You know what I mean? Like, you get pulled over, like, why are they bothering me?
Yeah. Hey, I've been pulled over as a police officer, and I do the same thing. It's human nature, you know. Like, I'm just trying to get to work, you know. I'm just, you know, trying to go about my day. So I mean, I get it, you know. And you know, it's one of those things. Like, you know, we have a job to do, you know, and other police departments have a job to do. You know, 99.9% of the time, we don't know who's in the car. We don't know where they're going. We have no factors. We have, you're speeding, you ran a stop sign, you know, like motor vehicle stuff that, you know, it comes with the job, it comes with the territory. But at the same token, like, the majority of the time, if you go and talk to pretty much any officer, less paperwork is better, you know, because we don't want to do paperwork. You know, that is the mundane thing they don't tell you when you get hired. Like, all right, you create a soup sandwich, like, you have to clean it up at some point, and that is involved with paperwork, you know? So it's one of those things, like, me personally, I'd rather be able to pull you over, just be like, hey, you're speeding, just slow it down. It kind of goes in that subconscious, like, hey, I kind of got to slow it down, be a little bit safer, you know, because the last thing I want to do is show up to, you know, your accident, you know, and, you know, something tragic happens. You know, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah,
for the majority of us. And there's many police officers, especially ones that have gone to scenes where it's young juveniles, teenagers just got their license, stuff like that. And you hear about the tragic incidents, especially right after graduation. You know, they act a little crazy because they got the freedom and they wrap their, car around a pole, or the car is, demolished, and, everybody dies in the accident. So we're going to get away from that topic because that's a little gloomy, but
We're bringing everyone up.
yeah, let's, but that's the reality of the situation, and I'm a straight shooter. I'm not one of those people who kind of beat around the bush, but that's why we do what we do, is more so the safety of the public. And I agree with many people, like there's bad apples in every single profession, police are no exception. And those people need to be weeded out. It is what it is, and I don't take offense to it, but don't judge me because of somebody else's actions,
Right. And I get it too, because as a comic, every time somebody does something stupid who's a comic, we get, it's very, they're not the same, obviously. There's not, but the parallels are there, where every time something happens to a comic or something happens, that where I was talking to you a little bit about before, like the what was it, the Will Smith slap at the Oscars,
Yep.
Like,
Yeah. And you did a news interview with that, and we got a short clip, and then we'll dive right into it.
Sure.
Dave Chappelle attacked on stage in Los Angeles last night. Western Mass News reporter Kristen Burnell joins us live after talking to a local comedian about this latest incident.
Chris, I caught up with Western Mass native Marty Caproni on Zoom as he is in the middle of a national comedy tour.
This isn't more of a disturbing trend that we're going to see ever since the Oscar stuff with Will Smith.
Social media is buzzing after a video from Tuesday night went viral showing a man rushing the stage at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles.
All right, so there's a couple things with that video. One, she does like 75 head nods before she starts talking.
Yeah.
And that's unedited. Like, I didn't add head nods in. And I was watching that video, and the only time I did any editing is because it is a decently long clip. I edited the beginning a little bit, and then kind of the end, the majority of the news interview. But I didn't edit the amount of head nods that she has. And I counted. There's like roughly around 17 head nods before she starts talking.
That's Western Mass News for you. We're 106th market in the country, so you get. She's really sweet. She's a good reporter, but you get them when they're new here. You know what I mean? Before they move up to the bigger markets. So the ticks and that stuff, you'll get some of those. Yeah. But like when that happened, you know what I mean? That was an example. I was on my way to a show. They called me up. Can we interview you? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, for what? And then it was the Chappelle thing. He got tackled after the Chris Rock thing. So it was like just another series of questions about it where you just got to answer. And it's like, geez, you kind of want to say like, listen, lady, this stuff happens. It has happened throughout my entire, 15 years doing comedy. It's happened to me. It's happened to a bunch of people where people try to come up on stage, storm the stage, all that stuff. It's not unique. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it happens nationally, and all of a sudden it's perception's reality, and everyone's like, oh my God, every comedian's getting hit everywhere. And you're like, geez, I hope that's not the case, but it does happen, Same thing, all this stuff, it's the parallels are there. It's not the same thing at all, but the parallels are there between how you get asked about other people. I always feel bad for cops up here when you see like one of these like really egregious police shootings and everyone gets on the cops up here, and you're like, wait a second though. Like most of the ones that I see are like down south, like Alabama, South Carolina. They're like these places where you're like, I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? Like there was one in South Carolina where there's a police shooting. It's like, geez, you mean to tell me that a cop with an 8th grade education in the deep South might be racist and abuse his power? Oh my God, I'm shocked. Knock me over with a feather. You know what I mean? but then everyone up here has to answer. You know, the guys up here are like, no, I had to like go to an academy. I need to get a 4-year degree. Like they're like, yeah, I guess we're the same. We all do the same job. You know what I mean? It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it kind of goes to the testament, you had kind of a little stand up having to go with the back and forth with Joe Biden and Trump,
No,
and and the two of them kind of going back and forth, and it's the comparative nature of things. Like, even though somebody's in the same profession, excuse me, kind of like in comedy, you know, I'm not going to be able to compare you to somebody that just started stand up, right? And if you,
I appreciate that.
yeah, I mean, if I went to my first comedy show and this, we look up the guy and it's like, his second show or whatever, and he's awful, and then do I place that judgment and never go to a comedy show again? Um, and I've gone to Comics Roadhouse many times because I live right down the road.
Yeah.
And, you have some people that, they reach for the fence on some of the jokes, but then you have like yourself, like you keep it real, you keep it classy, but at the same time, you hit on topics that are current, but you make fun of everybody.
That's
right?
what I try to do. Yeah. I comedy's a weird art, man. It's cool, by the way, that you live right down the road from comics because, I mean, selfishly to me, because those people are like my family. They've been with me since almost the start of my career when they were over at Foxwoods, and then they relocated to Mohegan. I worked my way up from just being a guy getting lucky to do a guest spot on a Wednesday show to now headlining a weekend at that place. It is a premier club, so you get some real heavy hitter, real solid comedians in there all the time. They're very good about what they do. But yeah, you get that point where it's like it's going to be different. My approach to comedy, and not every approach is the same, is kind of my approach to life, and I think it comes from having a little gray in the beard now, where you realize that if you're invested in too much in one thing as opposed to another, you're probably missing out on something. You know what I mean? If you're leaning too much one way or another, the Trump and Biden thing, people are so passionate either way about it. I look at it like, listen, man, all of it's bullshit at the end of the day. In my time on this planet, I've noticed something, and I've been heavily involved in politics and everything else in my youth and everything. Most of it is really not what's important. What's important is your friends, your family, the people close to you, the people that you interact with day to day. The people in Washington, I can promise you, don't give two shits about you. Probably about 5% of every politicians in Washington give a shit, and the rest of them are there to feather their nests and make a good soundbite and enrich themselves and move on with their lives. And I guarantee you, when they get done their soundbite, they're not sitting around passionately arguing at Thanksgiving dinner over stuff. You know what I mean? But yet regular families are. They're busy on a yacht, sometimes with their opponents, the people that are directly across the aisle from, laughing and having a good time because they realize that's all bullshit. It's like lawyers when they get out of court. They go after each other in court, and then they can sit down and have a beer after and laugh, make fun of each other and everything else. That's more what politicians are like, nowadays than before. There's so much money at stake in it. So I just make fun of everyone. I got that, like I say, I make fun of Biden, I make fun of Trump, I make fun of whoever and everyone and anyone, regardless of, but I don't do it like meanly either. You know what I mean? I try to do it in a ball busting way, a true New England ball busting way, which is the way I grew up in my generation. If you were all hanging out, you made fun of everybody and anybody, and that's how they knew they were part of the group. And if you weren't making fun of somebody, then you were treating them like they were special needs and they belonged in a glass case. And you know what I mean? It was like it was almost an unfair way to approach things, So that's kind of my approach to comedy, in general.
Yeah.
And you can't really, you can't get too invested either side. You look at these kids, like even now, like we were just talking about the cop things. There's like a movement that it's the ACAB, all cops are bad or whatever. And I have friends that I love and respect, and they're like, dude, ACAB, ACAB. And I'm like, guy, like you can't say that. Like that is such a childish way to approach life. It's just like, oh, that is bad, and I don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, or you know, politics. If you believe in this, you're bad, and if you believe in this, you're good. And if you agree with me on everything, then you're good. And if you disagree with me on 5%, then you know, pardon my French, my phone just buzzed up. But then you're a fucking asshole. You know, it's like I'm not. Like I just have my own views on things. And at the end of the day, it's funny when you look at it, they're the same. You know what I mean? There's the same thing that I just was pointing out to somebody the other day. You know, it's crazy, but it was because I laughed because it was 2 days after Hispanic Heritage Month ended. They just started rebuilding the wall. To rebuild the wall, right? So I'm like, all right, well, okay, so I guess the difference that was there is not really that big difference because that was like one of the things that, and then you look at it and you go, okay, well, maybe the last guy was kind of an asshole the way he approached it, but then you go, maybe he was saying that stuff to try to discourage people from even trying, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Talking super tough and everything else, and maybe that had some effect, as opposed to now they're like, we love everybody and we're gonna treat anyone who comes here great, and blah blah. They're like, shit, there's too many people. We got to put up a wall. Like, we gotta, you know. And now all those people that were, you know, crying and carrying on about it now have to sit there and hold their nose and be like, yep, well, you know, the guy that I told you was the best. He's doing the same thing, you know.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the conversations that like you end up having with people, especially people that they have like really hardcore blinders onto the world.
Yeah.
You'll say something, you know, which is kind of like a broad subject, a question, and, you know, you get hit with an answer that's just out of left field. It's relevant to the situation,
Right.
you know, and, you know, you're like, are we even having a conversation right now? You know, and you know, and it goes to testament. Like, I'm going to show this clip of Gary Busey, your take on, you know, buttered sausage, because every time I see this clip, this is how I feel like sometimes I'm talking to people. I'll have a very direct yes or no question, you know, and you get hit out of left field with an answer that is irrelevant to the conversation.
Are we coining a new thing here, the Gary Busey effect? Is that going to be something that we start right here on the podcast?
I think it's just going to be the butter sausage effect.
All right. Well, that sounds like a name of a film that I might have watched in my youth, but all right.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
let's see that. I want to see this.
Let's talk about your Cable Ace Award.
Let's talk about buttered sausage. Talk about buttered sausage, where it comes from, what it does. Why is it doing what it's doing? Get it out of my face. What about buttered sausage?
That's not your jam. It's not your thing. You don't like it?
It's not my jam. I don't buy jam. I buy honey, and I kiss it on the lips.
Hey.
It's so out there, and it's, you know, let's talk about your Cable Ace Award. Let's talk about buttered sausage. You know, it's like, what? You know,
I've never given any thought to buttered sausage, and Gary has now changed my life. Yeah. My first thing looking at that is, and sorry to Gary, but how visually disturbing that is. Jeez, I had like his face. There's no symmetry there anymore. I don't know what's going on. It looks like one of those refrigerator magnets with the googly eyes or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Geez, God, that's disturbing. But I mean, it's Gary Busey, so it is what it is. You know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You find those conversations with people, and they're just the conversation is a one-sided thing because they're used to having a one-sided conversation because they're on social media, and the only things that they see on social media agree with them, and the only people that they have on their Facebook or their Instagram agree with them. So they're in that echo chamber, you know, just hearing what they want. What do they call it? Confirmation bias, you know, where you only go to news sources that you know support your position, and then you never factor into anything else. And then you're like, so that's the way it is. And then you just go out in the world. they're not looking to have a conversation with anyone. They're not even looking to be empathetic or understand another point of view. They're having a conversation simply because they're trying to convert you to their way of thinking. It's almost like
a cult.
Yeah, I was now this really puts it bad. But I was about to say, like, it's almost like when the Jehovah's show up at your door.
Yeah.
You're like the Cope. Now I'm like, oh god, all the Jehovah's are gonna hate me. But no, but yeah, sort of like that. You know what I mean? Like their mindset singular focus that you're wrong and you need them because they can save your point of view because they have all the information. And if COVID didn't teach anybody anything, it's that none of us have the goddamn information half the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
I listen when the thing started. I say it. I say you probably find a clip of me saying it. I say when it started, I was like, "Stay home, wear a mask." Social. I was all on board, man. Everything, you know. But after a few months, I was like, "Man, this is starting to seem pretty bullshit. A lot of this stuff is really suspect." You know what I mean? Like this is kind of, and I have friends that were diehard conspiracy people right from the jump, and I was like, I had to look them in the face and be like, you know, you were more right than you were wrong on this one, and I was more wrong than I was right on this one. It is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
But even those people, though, they're the same. You know, some of my friends are so far down the conspiracy rabbit hole that I talk to them and they're like, "That's not true. Let me tell you why." And then they tell you, and you're like, "Well, that's patently false," and I'll tell you why. Here's exactly how you know this, and they're just like, "No, no, 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 no." They don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? It's like, how dare anybody question my thinking? You know, and comedy, if there's nothing else that it's good for, is it really does over time. It humbles you. You know what I mean? Like it'll really humble you. It will. I mean, the great nights you feel like you're on top of the world, but the rough nights beat on you so hard that you just it's hard for you to walk around on the good nights like, yeah, I'm the shit, because after hundreds of times of bombing in tough situations where you thought everything was on the line and this and that and all that, after all of that, you realize you're like, you know what, man? Like, yeah, I don't have a handle on this the way I thought I had a handle on this thing, you know? And
Yeah.
it's the same thing in life, man. You know, we're all so convinced that we're right. And a lot of the time, most of us are wrong.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, like when COVID happened, I mean, you know, people really brought it to like their mindset is almost like all of a sudden we're going to have zombies walking down the road and, you know, people just, you know, coming up to your car, just like all crazy and stuff, because it was an unknown that nobody had ever experienced, you know?
But yeah, but dude, you know, here's the sad thing about this whole thing is that isn't a huge jump from where we could have been or where we could end up still. We got too many people on the planet, and Mother Nature is the Earth, if you'd like to believe, I think it's what's called Gaia hypothesis, where the Earth is a living being and it's just like us, you know, like as a person, you just think I'm just a person, but we have living organisms on us. There's thousands of mites on your face and your eyelashes and bacterias and fungi and everything all over your body. So you're kind of like the Earth to a mini ecosystem on you. And we could be like that to the Earth. And that's kind of the theory. And it's like, maybe it's running a temperature right now and it's trying to exterminate some of us to get back to some form of a balance. You know what I mean? So then it's a race with technology, right? But the weird part is they shot their wad with COVID, because what happens if tomorrow some virus, like you've been in the Middle East, right? So some virus like what's it, MERS or whatever, like the respiratory stuff that kills 90% of people. What happens if that evolves just a little bit and all of a sudden that starts spreading? Good luck trying to get anyone to take it serious after what everyone just went through. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That are like the, you know, some type of morphed like malaria, you know, where
it could be COVID.
it could be COVID.
You could get another variant of COVID that all of a sudden just starts giving people hemorrhagic fever or whatever it could be. Or there's a million things out there. And frankly, I point my finger at both parties because both parties very quickly politicized it. You know, Republicans politicized like, hey, it wasn't us and blah, blah, blah. And then you know, Democrats saw the opportunity and they politicized it for their stuff. So now we're politicizing everything, right? And then we're even politicizing science. Remember, they were like, follow the science and all that, blah, blah, blah. Well, now it's all politicized. So what happens the next pandemic comes along? And you're like, listen, we really this time need everyone to stay in the house. Everyone's going to be like, fuck you. I'm going out for a beer. I'm going here. I'm going there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And you had a great point. I think if we end up having another, pandemic, coming up with a new TV show, reality TV show. And we're going to take a look at this clip. This is the night that I met Marty, and I absolutely love it. I think it should happen.
That's why when 2020 happened, I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's just make them both president. How fun would that be? We're already divided like a country. We're like children divorced. Like, let's just split the difference right down the middle. Split custody. Trump gets us Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Biden gets us Tuesday, Thursday. We trade off every other weekend, It's like the real world Alzheimer's edition, like just two 80-year-old guys sharing a house, yelling at each other. You left the toilet seat up again, Joe. Come on, man. That's great TV.
Every time, like, as soon as I saw that, I immediately thought, 2020 happened and they're like, all right, release the Tiger King.
Right.
And if we go through another pandemic, it's released the reality TV show with the two of them living in the White House together.
Yeah.
It's just the concept. I mean, honestly, it would be absolutely hilarious.
Well, that's nice. Again, I try to find something. Even the people who are, diehard Trump people in the audience, they laugh at that. And even the people who are diehard Biden people will laugh at it because it's a silly thing, but it's also like, that would be pretty funny. You know what I mean? It's like the whole concept of the fact that it's how ridiculous, like, we definitely live in some kind of simulation. How ridiculous is life that we have like 400 million people or something like that in this country. And the two guys that we've managed to boil it all down to, like, the two guys are just two 80-year-old white dudes that, like, are rich and, like, barely still standing. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I know I say that everybody, Trump is healthy. No, stop it. Like, we have an age limit to be president, right? You have to be 35 to run for president. Why didn't they the founding fathers put in, a cap? My joke with the cap is they should cap it for when the guys or girls stop caring about having sex. That's when they should be like, you can't run.
Right.
At that point, what are you fighting for?
Right.
They're like, you know what I mean? They're like, that's enough. Some 45-year-old, 50-year-old that's barely, that's hanging on. That's who you want. You know what I mean? JFK. Right. Look at JFK. That guy. Clinton, yeah. Obama, those guys. They had even Bush, like what remember 9/11, he's climbing up on the pile and stuff. Could you imagine if something like that happened now? They can't even get Biden up the plane stairs without falling down.
Yeah. Yeah, and all the money we have in the world, they can't install an elevator for him,
Yeah, that's what I said. I go, we're the richest country in the world, put an elevator in. Come on, make it easy.
Yeah.
They try to put him on a bicycle, They're trying to show he's still virile, he's still got it. At this point, it's elder abuse. Stop doing it.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the guy. It's like, let him retire. You know what I mean?
All right.
Let the guy go off into the sunset and enjoy the last years of his life with his wife and his dog and whatever. I don't know about his dog. His dog keeps biting people, but whatever. You know what I mean? But you'd think we could get, a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old even from either party and get them to run.
Right.
But apparently, nope. We searched everywhere, and all we can do is find people who are over retirement age. All right. Okay. Sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. Like, I mean, for the majority of the country, like, everybody agrees on it. It's like, and I've said it before, even before I went to your show. I'm like, they had their own good attributes at some point, but. Everybody has like kind of an expiration, right? Where you kind of got to put it down, and say enough's enough. This isn't for me anymore. I'm not, at my prime to be able to lead a country, and it's one of those things. Like, I mean, he makes up his own. Like Biden makes up his own words, right?
Well,
Trump,
yeah, 80 something, you know what I mean? And
control
Trump
himself.
does too. Trump, you listen to Trump talk sometimes and he just bigly. You know, you're like, what? He's been running for president, bigly. You know, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? And I listen. I feel like this is a very benign, conversation. Like, but you know, someone's gonna be watching this, pissed off. Like, no, that's bullshit. This is bullshit. That guy said that. How dare you? This is there's somebody watching that angry right now, and to them, I would just be like, let it go, man. Like, enjoy your day. You know what I mean? Turn it off if it bothers you that bad. You know that stupid bit, by the way, that I have about them and do you know the biggest complaint I've gotten from that bit? The only one that I've gotten from that bit. I had a woman come up to me and she was like, "So you said Alzheimer's?" And I'm like, oh, "Here we go." She's like, "So you think that's funny? Like, is Alzheimer's funny to you?" And I was like, no, lady, I don't think Alzheimer's itself on its face is funny. Do I think there's funny pieces of that? Do I think the word itself is kind of funny sounding? That's like a thing for comics. Like, does it sound funny? Is it a funny sounding word? But she's like, it's not. Let me tell you. Like this crazy hubris of like, let me tell you. So now she's going to educate me. I let her go. And then she's like, and someday you'll see that. And I go, you mean like today? You mean like today? Like literally today, actually. Yeah. Okay. I had to go do a telemed appointment for my father in memory care assisted facility lockdown. And my father didn't recognize me when I came in. Now, is that funny on its surface? It was like, this is great. My father doesn't know who I am. Hilarious. No. But as a comic, do I see that and then go, well, here's the funny thing about that, or how bizarre is that? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I do, because I'm a comic. That's what you try to do. You either find the humor in things, and even if it's dark, or you don't, and you let it consume you and swallow you. I don't want to be that person, and I don't want to walk around thinking I'm the only person that knows what it must be like, and I need to educate anybody who says anything that's contrary to my little glass house. You know what I mean?
All right.
That's a weird thing.
Yeah, and I think, and I had Rodney Norman, on. He was over there.
I love Rodney. He's a buddy. I've known Rodney for years.
Yeah, and I've talked, not just you guys, but many other comedians before, even before I started the podcast. Just, I love meeting people. I love getting to know people's stories. And that's really kind of, how the podcast kind of started, helping with transition with the military, so on and so forth. People have to understand that a lot of content that either A, I put out for the podcast, or B, you put out as a comedian comes from personal experience.
Yeah.
It's something that you have knowledge about, and so you can shed light on it in its own way because there's a personal meaning behind the scenes with it, and you get it.
More for you. Sometimes for me, I'm just talking shit. Sometimes for me, I'm just being an idiot. A completely mindless idiot talking shit. And sometimes I don't even know when the time is that I am and that I'm not.
Yeah. But that's, the testament to, we can't take life seriously all the time, and if we do, it creates stress in our lives, and, we get overwhelmed with this tunnel vision of I have to be serious all the time. And, like Rodney says, prim and proper, and that's why I love like his short clip videos. And
Rodney's great, man. He really found his zone, Yeah. For those that aren't familiar with him, I'm sure you probably talked about it, but Rodney was a Marine Corps veteran. He's a Mormon. He's like a real, just a kind soul, a good guy, but also a guy that, I wouldn't want to mess with, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to piss him off, And I remember when Rodney was clean cut, he was funny then, just telling jokes. And I remember when he started growing out his hair and his beard, and I was like, what's going on? I think he was playing Santa Claus or something or whatever. And he must have made one or two of those videos and they took off. And now Rodney's like a legit, internet celebrity. He's got some internet fame and good for him too, because he had done the work for years and years and years of being a comic. And now hopefully he gets out there on the road, and when he is, he's got good crowds that come out to see him. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, but wouldn't it be weird? Like, he's got this comedy thing now, but realistically, he's still in the military. He's a trained assassin.
It wouldn't shock me.
You know, like he's like in my bushes in my backyard, listening in on this conversation right now, waiting for us to say something negative, and he's going to hit me real quick. And
he's like Rodney Norman, pastor, comedian, wet work specialist for the intelligence agencies. Yeah, I could see it. I could see it.
Yeah.
There's been times where I've been hanging out with Rodney and I've seen people say dumb things around him, and I just see the way he looks at him, like he just cocks his head, and I'm just thinking to myself, he'd probably kill you with his bare hands. I can see that.
Yeah, he's thinking about all the different kill shots, you know, like John Wick style with a pencil, you know.
Yeah, just take out your the temple, put the pencil in the temple of your head.
Yeah.
I can see him. I can see him doing that. It wouldn't shock me. But he's the kindest soul. He's a good dude. I like, it's funny to watch those people that you've met along the way in this thing, and I don't like, sometimes people like look. I think it's when you're starting out in comedy, and maybe this is similar to the military. If everyone's trying to get up the rank and they want to be E6, E7, E8, blah blah blah. And comedy early on, it's like crabs in a bucket. Everybody's just trying to get to a place, and that really never stops on some level. If you really take it serious and you love it and you appreciate the craft and everything, you want to be doing bigger things. You want to be the guy headlining the show. You want to be the person that has some recognition. You want to be all that. But somewhere along the line, I think probably it was just before COVID, I just realized, I was like, hey man, like, you might not be famous. You'll probably never be famous. It was never your goal to be famous. It was never my goal. My goal was always just to be as good at this as I possibly could, and to be able to hopefully make a little bit of a living with it. That was it. That was only my goal. So I'm like, so I've done that. And then my other goal, I always said, is I want to leave behind either an album or a special, something that my daughter can show her kids or whatever someday and be like, this is what your dad did. You know what I mean? Like and I've in one way or another, I've kind of accomplished the first one. The second one I'm actively working on now, and people, when you watch a special from a comic, Shane Gillis, did you watch Shane's new hour?
No, I haven't.
Dude, go on Netflix and watch Shane Gillis' new hour. He's been doing comedy less time than I have. I met him, cool dude, maybe like 4 years ago. He came up, he was working MGM here in my town. I had the night off, and he was opening for Soder. He was middling for Soder. And we hung out after, went bowling or whatever. And you could tell he was really funny. You could tell he was really smart. He was great on stage. But now that dude just released a special, man. You go watch it. I guarantee you'll message me after and be like, thank you. It's really a great special. This dude is really, really funny. And that, to me, I looked at that and I was like, yeah, it's awesome that he has all this fame. He's making a ton of money. But how cool is it that he has that special? It's now there for the world to have from now till whatever,
Yeah.
Lapse in 3 years. But no, but to me, that's the stuff that I look at and I go, oh man, that's what you want to strive for, is to be better. You know what I mean? To get good at what you're doing,
All right. Yeah. And I mean, just recently, I mean, we can't leave out Matt Rife, right? The TikTok famous, pretty boy.
Look at that kid. Look at him.
I mean, just chiseled.
Yeah.
The ladies love him, obviously.
Yeah.
I created a mashup, like, little TikTok video, and it like has that picture kind of going back and forth with some music, and then it flips to like a candy van, and it says like Matt Rife tickets. It was back when everybody's in uproar of what the cost was of his tickets, and it said Matt Rife tickets, $30 inside, on this like panel van, and he's become this, not just a TikTok sensation, but you do your research. I mean, he was on like Wild 'N Out. He was on like a couple like shows and stuff. So people don't realize, like, he had to put in the work. He just didn't automatically just boom off of TikTok.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. I'll give you a story. I'll give you a Matt Rife story. Probably around 2009, 2000. Yeah, probably around 2009. I was like, I think I was closing out. I shudder to say headlining, but I was closing out like a Friday late show at Comics at Foxwoods. And Joe Coy, who's awesome, who I got to know a little bit from my buddy Orlando, who opened for him. Joe was in the theater across the street, and he sent Matt and one of Matt's friends over, and they came in and they were like looking for a guest spot. And the club was like, yeah, we're thinking. I was like, yeah, put them up. That'd be great. So they put both of them up, and they were both very funny. But Matt, I was like, wow, this kid has all. You could see it when you've been doing it for a while. You could see like the raw talent. You go, look at, they got all the tools. You know what I mean? You're just like, all right, wow. Like in time, they're gonna be fantastic. They're gonna blow by me. You're just not sure when. Andrew Schulz is another one. Have you ever seen Andrew Schulz's work at all?
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff online. Yeah.
Another one, and I'm still cool with Andrew. Like if I see him somewhere, it's like, what's up? Because I the first time I saw him, I pulled him aside and I was like, dude, you're gonna be huge. You're gonna be huge. And we were talking about it, and I was like, I think you were middling for Sherrod. He's like, no. He's like, you were middling on the show, and I think I was hosting. And I was like, whatever it was, I remember watching him being like, this dude is fantastic. He was fantastic, and he was greener. He was maybe a few years in, but you could tell he had all the tools. And Matt Rife was the same way. And Matt was only probably at that time. Matt was only probably like 19, maybe. He's a baby face, he's like a little, and he was talking after. He's like, oh, that was so cool. He's like, just like in general, talking about comedy, like just one. And I was just like, dude, I was like, you're going to be wildly famous. And I remember I became Facebook friends with him and stuff. And I've watched him and Schultz. I haven't seen Rife since then. But when I see those guys, I don't get bitter or jaded or anything. Like I see that and I'm like, good for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that kid legitimately made, rumor had it was like over $25 million for this tour that he's doing.
Yeah.
How great is that?
Yeah.
The kid spent 10, 12 years busting his ass, getting good at something. Even though he was a handsome dude and everything else, he took the craft serious. He was working hard. And now this kid is going to be set, and his kids' and his kids' kids are going to be set for the rest of their lives if he manages his money right. That's fucking fantastic, I see Schultz, he's on my Facebook. I see him, he get married. He's out in Hawaii, this island, that island, Europe, his crazy honeymoons and stuff like that. It makes me happy to see that from people. You know what I mean? Like they bust their ass for it,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a testament to comedians like yourself and other comedians out there that, you're the older generation of comedians to, kind of the role models for these newer comedians coming up. And, they're looking at you, seeing your styles and studying the craft and everything else. And a lot of people don't realize, anything that you do, and I look at comedy as like a trade. It's like a trade. You have to learn from pretty much everybody, find your own avenue of approach to make it your own, and put in the hard work.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope no one's looking up to me, but I think that they really, the new kids that come out too, and this is what motivates me every day to write and to try stuff and fall and fail and get better and get better. I don't want to be the guy that just has the same hour, kept that hour, and just toured behind that. So even though I'm not famous or anything, I've watched the guys that I look up to, guys like Louis and Burr and Chappelle, and you watch them. They work, they create an hour, they hone it, they record it, they dump it, they go on to a new hour. I haven't recorded anything, but what I try to do every year to a year and a half is I try to dump most of what I've written and then keep subbing in. I usually do it in 15 or 20-minute increments of a new 15 or 20 minutes, every 6 months to a year, and then slowly let the old stuff go and just do it once in a while to keep it fresh if I ever did want to record it. I just do that process, even though there's no real reason for me to do the process. it's like I'm like a kid watching big leaguers take batting practice, and I'm going, okay, that's the way they do it. When I go back to the batting cages that I put my token in, I'm going to do it the way I watch them there, and maybe I'll get better someday, you know. And I think that I approach it that way. But one of the things that motivates me is these new kids come in and they have access to all this information, right? They have all these great specials to watch. They've got podcasts that they can listen to. Where when we were coming up, you know, if you were in a green room, like, and Norm Macdonald was like, "Hey, Marty, can I say something to you?" Yes, please. You know, and you'd ask questions, and they tell you stuff. You know, you get these kernels of advice from these guys that you looked up to before you were ever in comedy, and you'd have a conversation with them, and you could take so much information from that. Now there's podcasts. So veteran comics just talking on a podcast, and the kids listen to the podcast, they feel like they're part of the conversation. And in some cases they learn some, in some cases they get too much information too soon and it hurts their development. But in a lot of cases, man, some of these kids are coming out and they're getting real good real fast. Ian Laura, that's one. He's not a kid, but he's gotten very good. Steven Rogers, like some of these kids I've watched just develop, and I know they're not done developing. You're like, holy shit. So the only thing that motivates me on some of those times is where I'm like, I just don't want to be the guy still doing the same hour. You know what I'm saying? Like 10 years later from now, and everyone's like looking at me like I'm the football player in the leather helmet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy, and that's what happens if you don't keep working. The game will pass you by, man. It'll get pass you by. So that's one of the things that I keep trying to work on. It's almost, I'm sure, if you were like career, you're like like you're spec ops or something like that. You're not the guy just sitting around eating donuts while the 22-year-olds are sitting around drinking and stuff. You're the guy doing extra workouts and everything because you want to keep the job as long as you can. You know, that's probably put it into veterans.
Yeah, I mean, put in a little bit more perspective too. It's like, your boots on ground actually doing the comedic work. It's not like the people playing Call of Duty thinking they're in the military. You got a lot of people like that. They'll kid up and they'll put their helmet on, look like tactical, and then they sit behind a screen to play Call of Duty.
There's a lot of that with YouTubers and people, and they'll go on, they'll do 2 or 3 open mics, get some clips, put them up, and they're like, I'm a comedian. And then they go out and they cause trouble, like do all this stupid stuff for views, and the cops or someone show them, like, I'm a comedian, so I'm just being it's like, you're not a fucking comedian, dude. You know, stop it. But yeah, there's some of that. I always said to my father, because he could never understand why I threw away like a pretty successful career path and business and everything else to do this. And I said, I go, look, Dad, I'm if I'm in the NFL, here's the story. I'm like the 3rd or 4th string quarterback, but I'm on the bench somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, no one knows my name. You have to really look down the depth chart to figure out who I am or whatever. But like if you asked Tom Brady, he'd be like, yeah, no, I know that dude. I play against him in practice or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's kind of the way it is. It's like you're in the league and you're on the outside if you're me, the very outside. But I'm grateful to just be in the league. You know what I mean? I'm grateful to meet the people I've met and to be able to go out and tell jokes and meet people like you and meet other comics and just try to get better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. There's, different strings, within the comedic community. And, I didn't realize you have like the big names like Dave Chappelle, Wayne Brady, and, they got, famous from like shows they would do and all that kind of stuff. But even getting to that point of doing the shows, there was a lot of, build up in their career of hard work, and there's a very small percentage that actually get to that level in the whole career. You can still be successful, but to get to that level of like Dave Chappelle, Wayne Brady, and all those guys, like you have to have that break, I guess.
Here's a good example. Dave Chappelle he's not some overnight sensation. Dave Chappelle started this shit when he was like 14 years old. he have a driver's license and shit. I think I don't. He started in like Washington D.C. or something like that. He's been on stage telling jokes since before he was a legal adult. You know what I mean? As a child,
Right.
and he never stopped. And you look at him now, he started young, never stopped evolving, never stopped doing work. And you can make a very good case for the fact that he's probably the greatest doing it today. You know what I mean? Like the greatest active comic. He's, to me, I feel like that's not an overstatement, you know, an overstatement. Same thing I would feel about you know, Burr and these guys. Like these guys start young, they never stop, they always were dedicated.
Yep.
That says something, you know. The best comedian in Connecticut, as far as I'm concerned, for my money, one of the best, if not the best, is a kid named Marshall Brandon. You probably don't even know his name, but if you look him up after, goddamn, Marshall's been one of the funniest guys I've ever been around my entire life. I loved him the minute I met him. He was funny, he's great. And guess what? When Dave Chappelle said I need an opener and started to bring him out on the road opening, now look, he's, you know, I look at Marshall's Facebook. He's in Australia with Chappelle. He's in London with Chappelle, and he's performing in front of 30,000 people opening for Dave. You know,
Yeah.
It just happened because of a happy accident. It's not he just met Dave and Dave liked the way he was. Dave liked him because he's a great guy, but Dave watched him on stage and like, this guy's great. You know what I mean? That's the work.
Yeah.
Start crying.
No worries. Yeah, my dogs were actively fighting next to Rodney when I was doing the interview with him. Luckily, I have great equipment that drowned it out the majority of it. But yeah, I mean, it goes to the testament of like the late and great, you know, Robin Williams, you know, or you know, a lot of people don't realize even like, you know, Bob Saget and you know, people of that generation of comedy before you got into TV and movies and TV shows and stuff like that. You know, I mean, Bob Saget was a very raw, dirty comedian, and he was hilarious, you know, and the same thing with Robin Williams. And then they get in, you know, they just added that, you know, piece to the children's movies and shows and stuff like that. And it's a hit.
Yeah. That's one of the things too. You look in Hollywood and you see these people that are succeeding in multiple you know, they're actors or actresses or radio or a lot of them are comedians, because it is one of those weird jobs where you end up having to do a little bit of everything if you do it over the years. Just this year alone, I've had to do, I don't know, 2 auctions while I'm doing comedy, and then they're like, can you run our auction? So now I'm auctioneering, you know, or I got asked to do a couple indie films, and now you're trying to learn how to act on the fly, but you realize you're on stage all the time and you're conveying emotion. It's the same type of stuff. It is a cool, it's a cool craft to dedicate your time to, because it is useful in more than one capacity. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's almost like, you know, woodwork or carpentry or something like that. You know, it's good for one thing, but you can use it for other things as well, you know?
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I got to ask you, I mean, as a comedian, do people like, you know, they find out and they go, oh, you're a comedian. Ooh, tell me a joke.
All the time. I'm sure I don't like to speak for a lot of comedians all the time, but I think I could speak for just about every comedian alive when I say this. It's probably the most annoying thing that happens to us, is tell me a joke. And I just I used to have a witty thing like, what do you do if I show up at your job? Now I don't even entertain it. I just go, yeah, it doesn't work like that. And they'll be like, yeah, what is it? I'm like, no. And I will purposely make myself as dead and uninteresting as possible to them, just because I want them to be like, I bet you that guy's not even funny. Yeah. And then I want them to show up at a show, you know, just it's it's one of those stupid things that happens to you a lot. That's funny that you keyed into that. The other people always will say like, oh, so you're funny, huh? Have you been on TV? Have you been on the Tonight Show? And you're like, no, I haven't. And they just look at you like, oh, you're a piece of shit. And you're like, well, you know, I've only dedicated, you know, every, you know, 4 nights, 5 nights a week, you know, every week for the last 15 years doing this. No, well, you should come see a show. Trust me, it'll at least be worth your $25 or your $20 or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
It's an interesting business, man. It's an interesting game. It's some like your job and like those that served and everything like that. I'm sure it's the same thing. Like people ask you, have you ever had to shoot anybody? Have you ever? And you're just like, ugh, like,
Yeah.
like why would you ask that question? But
it's the same thing. And I look and I only bring it up because I'm like, I wouldn't want your job because it's almost like they're like, oh, you're a comedian. Okay. Dance for me, puppet.
right,
Like
little dancing monkey. Yeah.
it's like king, make me laugh, and it's like, it doesn't really work like that. Like, if you want to do that, just go look up some like terrible dad jokes and get a belly laugh.
It doesn't. It's weird too. Sometimes you'll see new comics and they'll be in a green room and there'll be a bunch of veteran comics in the green room. And you can see it in their eyes, this massive disappointment that they have where they're like, this isn't as fun as I thought. And it's like, yeah, the green room sometimes isn't fun. You know what I mean? Like the green room sometimes is just the comics sitting around, just staring at each other, looking at their notepad. What's going on with this book, or what's going on at that club? What's going on with this? Because you don't get to see each other all as much or whatever. Sometimes it's super fun. You know what I mean? But everyone has this thing like it's always on all the time. It's not, Sometimes you're on the road, you go to lunch with the other comic or whatever. If you're in a new town or whatever, you'll go to lunch or breakfast or whatever, and you'll just be sitting there and you'll be like, it's like just a regular old conversation like you and I are having. Then there's other times where you just get the right perfect storm of comics and you're like, God damn, that was the most fun. Like I 2019, I was up in Montreal and I saw Schulz and he was like, I'm getting a bunch of people together for breakfast. Let's start going. So it started with him and I, and he just started, and he asked all these comics that's some crazy names, you know what I mean? So I'm clearly the low man on the totem pole at this table, and it starts off with everyone talking about their publicist and their management, their agent, and this, and I didn't have management. I had never had management at that point. I didn't have, never had an agent. I never had a publicist, obviously. So I was just sitting there and this guy goes, what about you? Why are you so quiet? And I'm like, because I don't have those problems. And he goes like, what do you mean? And I go, that's because I suck and I eliminate all that stuff, and then Schultz is like, you don't suck, you're fine, blah, blah. But then as soon as they were done talking about the business stuff, we just started talking about the craziest shit, like way out of bounds shit, where like the waitress, you could tell, was like embarrassed to even come over near the table. But it was going on for like 2 hours. And while it was going on, I was like, how great is this? Like, this is like I get to be around. It's like a free show.
Right.
All comics, entertaining comics. And sometimes it's like that. But a lot of times it's not. It's not that glamorous.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, as you're telling that story, I mean, all I can think of is just like, you all get around like, hi, I'm Marty. I'm a comedian. And then the next guy's like, hello, I'm Steve. Yeah. And it's, it's the behind the scenes stuff that people don't see. And you're just getting to know the other comedians, learning off of them, seeing how they do things, stuff like that. And, people have to realize, like, every time you talk, it doesn't have to be a joke,
Yeah.
You're normal.
Yeah. There's a flip side to that, too. Sometimes you're hanging out with comics. It's one of my pet peeves. And I like to just talk and get to know people and goof around and be lighthearted, if I'm with comics. Sometimes you're not, but I like to try to be, at least. And sometimes you'll have the comics that are the observer, because we all like to observe people, you know what I mean, and get a read on people or whatever. And sometimes you have the ones that are observing so hard that it's obvious. And you're just like, look, this isn't fun if the entire time we're talking, I'm sitting here wondering what you're observing. Like, I get it, dude. You're smart. You do the job. You're a comic. You're very smart. Yes. And you're observant. That's great. And you know who else is? Everybody else who is so detached that they take themselves out of the moment of just being a fucking human being. So
Right.
just be a fucking human being. You have to sit here and study me. Oh, I talk too much. Oh yeah, I had coffee. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
You're judging me. You know what I mean? Like, we're all pieces of shit. We're all doing the same stupid job. You know what I mean? You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
sometimes that's like one of those things that you come across, but not always. Most of the time, it's just most of the time it's just people. You know what I mean? Just being people, being decent. You know. I love that I love that you have this platform though, dude. I think it's a cool thing. I hope that you build a good listenership with it. I think that like you said, people need to find some joy in their life, and they need to find things that entertain them. Do you listen to Rogan's podcast a lot or no?
Once in a while. I mean, most of the time I see like short clips. It's funny. I tell people all the time I've had a podcast. I'm into season 3 and I've yet to listen to a full episode of anybody's podcast.
That's good though. There's nothing wrong with that, because you'll find your own lane, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But one of the things I was going to say is like, I don't listen to like Rogan religiously, but sometimes they'll have a guest on where I'm like, oh wow, and it's usually not even comics. It's usually like an astrophysicist or something like that, something that really interests me, and I'll listen in, and I say to myself, Jesus, how great is this that you get this like level of entertainment, and then that guy's built this crazy level of an audience, you know what I mean? And providing it really at no charge for people. It's free content. If they want to listen, they can listen. If they want to tune out, they can tune out. If you got veterans that are looking for some example, I hope that they look to you and they go, wow, look at this guy. You know what I mean? Like he was over there, he was in the shit, and now look at him. He's doing this. He's got, he's working. You're doing a lot of good stuff, man. You really, really are. It's cool to see,
Yeah. And I wanted to create a platform where, I talk about transition, and I bring on a lot of guests. I just had a guest on. She's a Marine Corps veteran. She's the CEO of VetCom. She's an author of a book, Race to Save America, congressional candidate for the 49th District of California, Kate Monroe. And then to, comedians and every walks of life in between, because I feel like it's important to get perspective from other people, not just, in, just your wheelhouse. And I had a guest on back in, I think it was season 1, former SWAT commander for Houston PD.
That's cool.
And he has this book out, The Long Road Home. One of the things that stuck with me when I first started doing the podcast thing, when I had him on, and I apply it, in my life as well, and try to do it with the podcast, is if you just have people in your circle that do the exact same thing you do, you're not going to have perspective. You're not going to have, the outside perspective to be able to grow as a person. And changing the content, there's some people, they just stay in the niche all the time. And if I came on here and every single episode is like, how was your transition out of the military?
Right.
What sucked for you? Everybody would be like, okay, you're asking the same questions. It's pretty much the same answer all the time. The VA sucks right now because it's overwhelmed. And, I'm going through the shit, doctor's appointments every single week, and it's like, all right, let's kind of lighten the mood a little bit. Let's kind of, venture off into this, other atmosphere, where we have just life going on, and that's
right.
That's the kind of the content and, the platform that I'm putting out. Anybody's welcome to come on. I don't charge to view stuff because I think it's very important for people to get perspective from different avenues of approach, even yourself. And people that aren't in the veteran community, because if we stay so focused and put those blinders on to just listening to veterans, then, we're going to stay in that same lane all the time and not be able to get out of that funk we're in, or whatever the case may be.
Well, and that's valuable. Like you're not just talking about, but you're leading by example, doing it, which is cool, and comics do that a lot of times. You see comics with podcasts and they just have their friends on who are also comics, and it's another week of more comics and more comics and more comics. Well, it might be fun and entertaining to some. After a while, it's just the same shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's no perspective. There's no challenge or growth or conversation outside of the world of comedy. You know, we're a peculiar bunch, man. You know, like we call regular people at shows civilians the same way like veterans do sometimes. You know, so just the guy's just a civilian. Like we don't think about it, but I laugh in my head. I'm like the terms we're using, like we're veterans of the comedian wars. You know what I mean? Like we're not nothing special, you know. But if you watch like a comedy podcast, it's just usually two comics tooting their own horns about how brilliant they are because they're comedians, and we're really not. Most of us are pretty dumb. We're you know, I mean, some of us are smart, but we're not. There's nothing special. You know, I worked at a factory with a bunch of people when I was, you know, paying for school and everything, and those people were just as smart as the people that I was taking classes with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's good that you have the ability to have these kind of different interviews with different people who do different things, and then hopefully have some veterans like there are watching and they're struggling and having trouble transition, or they're just having bad times, to be like, hey man, you know, the shit doesn't last forever. You know what I mean? It's as bad as it may be, it can get better, and you're not lost at anyone. I mean, look, I look at you, man. You got a whole studio set up now. It's like real professional. Send me a schedule. It was like, yeah, I mean, it's quite an operation that you have going, and I think anyone who's, you know, looking at this, maybe they don't want to start a podcast, but maybe they're a veteran and they're like, you know, I want to have a chicken farm or whatever the hell they want to have. You know what I mean? They go, oh, yeah, I can do that. You know what I mean? You can do anything you put your mind to. You know?
Yeah.
Doing it, man. I think it's awesome. You know, I really do.
Yeah, and that's one thing with me is I always have to, like, for my own personal benefit, bring something to the next level. Otherwise, I get bored. Right. So half of my basement got cleared out, and construction starts this week of a full blown studio. And I can't put the sponsor out yet. But you know, once everything's completed, you know, I'm planning on bringing, you know, the podcast realm and Everlasting Veteran to even a new level.
Awesome.
You know, and forward progression, you know, and I only bring it up, and it's not to toot my own horn, it's just a personal endeavor for me, is I always have to strive in my personal life to do something a little bit better, you know. And, you know, anybody that wants to start a podcast, I mean, it's expensive, right? Getting good equipment, you know, I had to end up upgrading my computer. You know, I can pretty much mine crypto on it. I don't know how to, because my brain's not wired that way. You know, but it goes, and you apply it to anything in life, is, you know, when things become comfortable, all right, and boring, you have to find a new avenue of approach. And that goes to transition or anything else, not just the military, but in life in general. We're always going through multiple transitions. So my goal with this podcast is not just hitting the veteran community, but also hitting, you know, the veterans' families or people that aren't even veterans.
Right.
You know, because you can take something valuable from, you know, anybody. And it could just be that one little piece that helps you get through your day, through your week, through your year. And you know, you can change your mindset very easily by listening to other perspectives.
And I think that is real admirable, dude. And I you know, when you get that new studio, don't forget the little people. When I'm down there that way the next time, I'll be happy to sit down with you again and do it face to face, and not over like a Zoom call.
Yeah. Yeah, I love, you know, I'm setting it up where it's, you know, 3 mics, you know, it's got the podcast tables, and then I'm also doing more of like kind of a relaxed setting where it's like a living room, you know, and just, you know, just a couple mics, you know, you chill on the couches, you have a conversation. It's, you know, more relaxed, you know, more personable, and you can kind of just like shoot the shit, you know. It doesn't have to always be, you know, like a news station, you know, and that's what I'd never wanted to go towards. You know, I make it look professional, but at the same time, like, there's certain stuff, the content, I don't want to be like, well, and today Marty is going to the store, you know, and it's, you know, it's one of those things where I just don't, you know, I just want to be me. If people don't like me, I don't give a shit, you know. But if, you know, if they like the content, they like the guests that are coming on, And I'm not the star of the show. When the guest comes on, they're the star of the show. You know, I like promoting people. That's what I love to do. And I'm really good at it. You know, I think I've found like my calling. I should have done this like, you know,
Years ago.
Business has always been in my blood. You know, I'm a real estate agent as well. I have another business outside of Everlasting Veteran LLC, but Everlasting Veteran, you know, LLC is, you know, the umbrella business for the podcast. You know, I get service dogs out there. You know, I have a clothing line. You know, there's so many different avenues of approach. I do sponsorship / promotion packages to help promote other veterans or businesses, you know, to get off their feet. And it's given me a personal purpose that I've created myself, not I go to work and policing has its own purpose,
Right.
but it's not always a personal purpose in life.
You need a purpose outside the job, and you need a life outside the job.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you've found and made for yourself. And like I said, I mean, I think it appeals to everybody, but I think the people that really can take away maybe something life-changing from it are the people who are vets who are watching it, and they're maybe struggling. You know what I mean? They're maybe like, get ahead, I come back here and everything's gone to shit. I can't get a goddamn doctor's appointment. I can't get this again. You know, they're dealing with the shit that you guys always deal with. And then they come out and they see you and they're like, oh shit, hey man, Ryan's got a business going. You got this podcast going, you know, like, you know, maybe I could take some inspiration from that and try to do some of that in my own life, you know, and that, I think that's cool, man. I'm happy that you've let me be a part of this, you know, so appreciative of it, you know, so thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And a lot of people, you know, listening or watching, like, it hasn't been an easy road for me. You know, to get to the point where I'm at right now, I had to change my mindset. I had to get out of the funk, and it took years. Years. You know, but having the good support, you know, that I have, don't brush off anybody that's trying to help you, because that's going to be your rock. That's going to be, you know, your steps to a better life. The people that are surrounding you when you're in your darkest times and when you're at your best. You know, I tell people all the time, there's going to be people that come and go, right, in your life. The ones that show up when you're successful aren't necessarily truly the ones that really care about you all the time. If they stick around when you're at your lows, all right, those are your ride or dies, you know, and people have to understand that and, you know, have that mentality, especially even when you're starting a business or a new career or something like that. If they don't answer you, they don't come around until you're successful, they're not worth keeping around in your life. Sorry. Right. That's just the truth of it.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. You know, it's one of the reasons why, you know, it's funny. I hold a fondness to all the people who have been kind to me and shown up to see me do a show in a shit dive bar for $5. You know what I mean? And watch me eat my balls, but then still come out, you know, 6 months later and watch me at this place and that place. And the few and far in between when I do have some of the nicer shows, the sweeter gigs, you know, bigger venues or theaters or whatever, when those ones happen, those are always the ones that if they reach out and they're like, hey man, you know, is there any way I could grab a ticket or whatever? Those are always the ones that I try to be like, let me see if I can find, you know, if there's a comp list and if I can throw you one, you know, because those, like you say, the people that were with you at day one are the ones that you know you can be thankful for and remember. You know.
Yeah. Yep.
Not that people can't come in your life at any point and still make a huge impact, whether you're having the best times of your life or the worst, you know. But there's something to be said for the people that been there through your darkest hour. You know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Marty, I appreciate you coming on. Before I, you know, give some shout outs and stuff, is there anybody that you'd like to just thank?
Well, yeah, man, I'll tell you this. I thank the people who are listening, who are veterans and stuff like that. I thank you guys for everything that you've done. I do appreciate, you know, I bust balls, I bust veterans balls on stage, but I do appreciate you guys. I appreciate what you sacrificed. I appreciate what your families have sacrificed for what you guys have done for the country. And then, as far as shout outs go, man, I always tell people I have my little comedy club here, Loft, and we do a Thursday show up here in Chicopee. It's $20. They have dinner and a comedy show with a mix of veteran comics, not veteran like you're veteran, but some of them, but seasoned comics and newer comics, and we do that every Thursday. It's not on the internet anywhere. It's just, you just got to show up and pay at the door. But other than that, man, like I say, the guys at Comics, that's how we met. So I'm grateful to them, and I'm grateful to everyone. I'm grateful to everyone who's had any hand whatsoever in coming out to a show, or comics who've given me a little tip or advice or whatever. I'm grateful to still be in here doing this thing and trying to get better every day. And I'm grateful to you for having me on. So thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, everybody can go check out Marty on his Instagram. The newer generation just calls it IG.
Yeah.
But you can go check him out. He posts some dates and everything else up on there of different shows coming up and everything else. You got some shows coming up this October.
Yeah.
And you constantly are posting on there as well. I just want to say I appreciate Rockin' Frenchies, Marine Corps veteran, my brother-in-law, and a dog breeder. He helped me get the first service dog out to a veteran back in July. And I've also now partnered with Meadow Ridge Wimes and Danes up here in Connecticut. They breed Danes and Wimes. We got 2 service dogs going to be going out this Veterans Day. 2 service dogs, everlasting veteran partners with breeders specific, so that way we can get the best dogs out there. And everlasting veteran pays for 6 months to a year of the food and the training for the service dog, and gets the placement to the veterans. So I appreciate everybody's support. I appreciate you coming on, Marty.
Thanks for having me.
And everybody that's been supporting Everlasting Veteran thus far, because it certainly is a journey, and in bringing the community in, to help with that journey, I truly appreciate it. So you have a good day, Marty, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, man. We'll talk to you soon, Ryan. Have a good one, everyone.
From the cannons, when the smoke clears, we're still standing.
Bulldog 3-3, patch 8 November, fire for effect, over. Enemy OP on Hilltop, over.